Hello, I'm CJ Werleman. In this episode, we explain why Muslim nations must confront the West and reconquer Jerusalem. But first, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Now let's get into it. The Islamic holy month of Ramadan is underway, a month for which Muslims around the world fast from sunrise to sundown to bring nearness to God and empathize with those less fortunate. But this year, as Muslims feel the hunger in their bellies, they will undoubtedly be thinking of those in Gaza, who are being starved to death by the criminal Zionist regime. Children are not only dying from Israeli bombs and missiles, but also from malnutrition and dehydration, while others barely survive by eating leaves and animal feed. This footage of a young child helping his father prepare wood to be used for cooking whatever food they can find in the rubble of their bombed-out home should break our collective hearts. Ramadan should never be this way.
أجواء بتبكي ولا واحد فيه الفرحة في عينيه، الكل ماشي وحزين، الأسعار غالية جدا، يعني قلوبنا قاعدة بتنزف، فيش أجواء رمضان.
Muslims across the world will also be praying for the occupied city of Jerusalem, where Israeli forces are not only limiting access to Islam's third holiest site, but also attacking and harassing Palestinian worshippers during this most sacred and solemn month, forcing most to pray on the sidewalk instead of inside Al-Aqsa Mosque. This atrocious behaviour can never be normalised, and it must stop now. And it will stop now if we imagine a new way forward, together, because as it stands, the State of Israel, with its millions of European migrants, has brought only violence and oppression to this holy land and its indigenous Palestinian population. Zionism has transformed one of the world's most beautiful and sacred places into a land of bloodshed, misery, and chaos. But, like all European colonial experiments that came before it in the Middle East, the Zionist colonial enterprise has failed. The world now understands clearly that there's no place in modern civilization for a state built on racism and genocide. Global condemnation and isolation spells the end times for the Israeli occupation. Its inevitable death is not a matter of if, but a matter of when, which means it's now time for the world to imagine a Ramadan miracle. And by that, I mean a new Palestine and a new Holy Land. I want you to imagine this future because the rest of the world now needs to understand and envisage how a Palestinian state liberated from a criminal foreign occupation will not only deliver peace and prosperity to Muslims, but also Christians and Jews alike. We know this to be true because history proves it, remembering that Muslims ruled Jerusalem from the middle of the 7th century to the end of the 11th century, constituting nearly 500 years of Muslim rule, in which Christians and Jews thrived and prospered, with their respective houses of worship admired and protected. The Islamic Caliph Omar al-Khattab followed the guidance set forth by the Prophet Muhammad in ensuring Christians and Jews were treated equally as peoples of the book, as recounted by revered history professor Roy Casagrande, who explains how the Caliph negotiated the surrender of the Roman occupation with the Christian Patriarch of Jerusalem, Cardinal Sophronius.
And as they're walking, Umar ibn al-Khattab says, why don't we do this? All Roman politicians leave Jerusalem. You just go, if you're a politician. So if you're a top bureaucrat, an officer, and you can take anything you can carry. So you can take gold, as long as you can carry it. And Sophronius goes, okay, that's reasonable. That's actually more than reasonable. I just assumed you'd enslave them and take their gold. I don't see how anybody would be mad about that. And then what else? And the Caliph goes, oh no, I was thinking that's it. We don't do anything else. And Sophronius goes, wait a minute, I am really confused. So when us Romans capture a city, we enslave a segment, we plunder the city, probably a little bit too much raping too. We might even burn some of it just for grins and giggles. And then we declare it to be ours. What about that? And Umar ibn al-Khattab goes, no, we're not going to do any of that. No plundering, no raping, no enslaving. We don't do that stuff. And then Sophronius goes, oh, but you're going to seize property in the city. And the Caliph goes, no, we're not going to take anybody's property. We're going to leave the city exactly like it is. The only thing I want to do is eject the Roman politicians. with whatever they can carry. And Sophronius goes, there's nothing to negotiate. Yeah, we surrender the city this instant. I don't.
That's how the Roman occupation of Jerusalem was defeated by the Muslim army. No bloodshed, no acts of retribution or revenge, only a peaceful surrender and reconciliation. This is the religion of Islam. And this is why these historically accurate stories about the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem have been omitted from school textbooks throughout the Christian-dominated Western Hemisphere.
The Caliph goes, okay, I want to meet some of the Jews living in Jerusalem. And Sophronius goes, there are no Jews in Jerusalem. And the Caliph goes, what do you mean there's no Jews in Jerusalem? The city is holy to the Jews. How could there be no Jews? And he says, well, us Christians, we pretty much murder them every chance we get. We really hate Jews. In fact, in the war we just did against the Persians, the Jews sided with the Persians. And so we murdered 20,000 Jews in Jerusalem and completely purged the city of its remaining Jewish population. And Omar ibn al-Khattab goes, no, this is wrong. You can't do this. And so he turns to a convert to Islam, a Jewish convert to Islam, and he says, I need you to find me 80 Jewish families that were willing to volunteer to move to Jerusalem so we can reestablish a Jewish presence in this city. And that's how the Muslims conquered Jerusalem. And that's the stuff that's left out of your history books.
This peaceful coexistence under Muslim rule, however, was smashed roughly 400 years later in the year 1099, when Christian crusaders from Europe invaded and conquered Jerusalem, where they slaughtered every Jewish and Muslim man, woman and child, turning the streets of the old city into ankle-high rivers of blood. These crusaders desecrated Al-Aqsa Mosque before turning it into a church, the Temple Church of Jerusalem. But thankfully, Christian rule of the city would not last long, ending in the year 1187, when Salahuddin Ayyub, the then Sultan of Egypt and Syria, united the core of the Islamic Empire under his domain to retake Jerusalem. But rather than vengeance and violence, Salahuddin evangelized Islam's core values, in promising to allow Christians and Jews to remain in the city as equal citizens with equal rights.
من المهم أن نتأمل مسلك المنتصر، لأن كثيرا من القادة في التاريخ نشوة الانتصار تعميهم عن رؤية الحقائق فيتجهوا إلى سفك الدماء والانتقام بوحشية. إلا هذا الرجل.
Saladin is famous throughout history for his generosity, his justice, and his ability to inspire his people. This has earned him respect on the Christian side and the Muslim side.
A truly remarkable man leading a truly remarkable historical moment, given he preached justice, equality, harmony, and peace. At the same time, Christians were murdering Muslims and Jews wherever they could find them in medieval Europe. It's just an undeniable fact that the Islamic world has always been a safe haven for Christians and the Jewish people, whereas the Christian-dominated Western world has delivered Muslims and Jews only torment and misery. And we should also not forget that when fascist regimes were committing a Holocaust in Europe, the Jewish people were thriving in the Middle East, holding lofty positions within the private and public sphere throughout the Arab world.
In fact, Tom Friedman, Jewish-American columnist in the New York Times, told me in this very chamber last week that he believed, had Muslims been running Europe in the 1940s, 6 million extra Jews would still be alive today. So I'm not going to take lessons in anti-Semitism from someone who's here to defend the Judeo-Christian values of a continent that murdered 6 million Jews.
Now, when you fast forward to today's current times in occupied Palestine, you see Israeli rabbis calling for genocide. You see Israeli soldiers committing genocide. You see Israeli leaders celebrating genocide. And you now see Christians under attack from these same Zionist Jews.
That escalation is of hate crimes against Christians in Israel. In this Jerusalem church, the words "Jesus is garbage" was scrawled on the side wall. At the Vatican's Jerusalem headquarters, recent graffiti threatened death to Arabs and Christians and all those who hate Israel.
As you can see, the contrast between Zionist and Islamic rule in the Holy Land could not be starker, which is why Israel's genocide in Gaza and the Palestinian resistance to it has opened so many hearts and minds in the Western world towards Islam. We must now build on this momentum by urging Muslim nations to confront America and Europe. They can no longer be spectators. They have to demolish the argument that an apartheid state has the right to commit genocide in the name of self-defense. The time has also come for Muslim nations to appeal to non-Muslim peoples too. They should recall how the very last verse of the Quran is not directed at Muslims exclusively, but to all of mankind.
What is the last word in the Quran? Or the last word? It starts out with the name of Allah, Bismillah. But it ends with who is the message to. It doesn't say Muslim. It doesn't say movement. What does it say? Minul jinnati wan nas. For the jinn and human being. Subhanallah. That message in there exposes the real truth of what Islam is supposed to be. The problem is not the message. It's those who have been left behind to convey that. Us. We're not doing a very good job. Need to work.
If that doesn't inspire you, then consider this. Last week, my friend and fellow human rights activist Shaun King converted to Islam. He and I caught up briefly at the Doha Forum. He's a remarkable individual who has tirelessly championed Muslim causes for years and at a great personal cost. I couldn't be happy for him in this moment. Call it a small Ramadan miracle, call it what you will. But that's my time for today. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we kindly ask you please support our effort to expose and confront injustices in the Muslim world by becoming a member of this show at patreon.com/CJ We can't produce, sustain and grow this show without your help, and we offer exclusive benefits to those who do. But for now, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and stay blessed.